Tonight, we uncover the final moments of a 13-billion-year-old lie as the golden eye of humanity peers into a reality that defies every law we have ever written. For 30 years, we waited for a glimpse of the beginning, a snapshot of the messy, chaotic birth of everything we know. We spent $10 billion to build a time machine, launched it 1 million miles into the dark, and held our breath for the first light of the cosmic dawn. But when the first images from the James Webb Space Telescope finally flickered onto the monitors at the Space Telescope Science Institute, the atmosphere wasn't one of triumph. It was a cold, suffocating silence. They didn't find the primitive, fragile smudges of gas our physics predicted. They found universe breakers, massive, mature, glittering skyscrapers of stars standing in an era where the foundations shouldn't even have been poured. Behind the polished press releases and the vibrant wallpaper-worthy photographs, the scientific community began to experience a profound intellectual vertigo. Rumors of developer leaks began to swirl through the corridors of major institutions, suggesting that the data wasn't just surprising, it was impossible. We thought we were looking at our past, but as the golden eye stared deeper into the edge of existence, it began to reveal a chronology inversion that suggests we might be witnessing a fracture in reality itself, a place where our universe ends and something ancient, mirrored and terrifying is bleeding through. 1 million miles from the warmth of the world, suspended in the permanent, frozen shadow of its own sunshield, the James Webb Space Telescope orbits a ghost. It sits at Lagrange Point 2, a gravitational pocket where the pull of the Earth and the Sun reach a perfect, silent equilibrium, allowing the telescope to remain undisturbed, cold, and eternally vigilant. To the human eye, the patch of sky it stares into is an absolute, suffocating black, an empty void that for decades was thought to be a graveyard of forgotten potential. But Webb's golden eye is not a human eye. It is a forbidden instrument, an 18-segmented mirror spanning 6.5 meters, coated in a layer of gold 48 nanometers thick, 1,000 times thinner than a human hair, specifically chosen because gold is the only material that can efficiently capture the faint, infrared whispers of a cosmos that has been trying to hide from us for 13 billion years. These infrared photons are time capsules, stretched by the very expansion of space-time as they traveled across the dark, shifting from visible light into a spectral phantom that only the coldest machine in existence can detect. On the side of the telescope facing the Sun, temperatures reach a searing 80 degrees Celsius, but behind the shield, in the realm of the mirrors, the temperature drops to a bone-chilling negative 233 degrees. It must be this cold because even the internal heat of a computer circuit would drown out the light of the most ancient structures in the universe. The engineering of Webb was a $10 billion gamble on the idea that we understood the narrative of existence, yet the moment it opened its eyes, it began to quietly dismantle that story. For a generation, we lived within the comfortable boundaries of the standard model of cosmology, a framework called lambda cold dark matter, which told us that after the Big Bang, the universe was a uniform soup of hydrogen and helium that slowly, over hundreds of millions of years, condensed under the patient hand of gravity. We expected to see the first galaxies as small, irregular, and dim, blue smudges of infant stars struggling to ignite in the primordial fog. But on July 12, 2022, when the first deep-field image arrived, it wasn't a baby picture of the cosmos. It was a revelation of mature complexity that left researchers stopped mid-sentence. In a patch of sky the size of a grain of sand held at arm's length, Webb revealed thousands of galaxies, each a city of hundreds of billions of stars, glowing with a structural perfection that should have taken 10 billion years to achieve. Yet the light from these galaxies had been traveling for 13 billion years, meaning they were fully formed when the universe was barely 500 million years old, just 3% of its current age. This discovery triggered what insiders are calling the crisis of precision. Imagine watching a time-lapse of a skyscraper being built in the middle of a desert. You expect to see the foundations poured, the steel frame rising, and finally, the glass installed over years. Instead, you hit play, and in the first 30 seconds, a 50-story building is already complete, with people eating lunch in a marble-floored lobby. You wouldn't say the building is impossible, you would say there is something fundamentally wrong with the tape of reality. This is the vertigo that hit the scientific community, the realization that the construction schedule of the universe we've taught in every classroom for 70 years is not just outdated, it's a fiction. As the data kept pouring in throughout 2023 and 2024, the universe breakers didn't disappear. They multiplied. Webb found galaxies like GS9209, a massive system that had not only formed all its stars, but had already died, shutting down all star formation by the time the universe was less than 2 billion years old. It had lived an entire productive life, retired, and gone quiet before most galaxies had even finished building their first house. The institutional response was one of productive chaos, but beneath the professional mask, the law vault suggests a narrative of institutional panic. While NASA's public statements cautiously noted tensions in the models, researchers were privately describing sleepless nights, staring at screens that showed structures that physics simply did not allow to exist. This is where the human story of Webb takes a darker, more psychological turn. For a senior cosmologist who has spent 40 years refining simulations of a slow, grinding universe, Webb's findings feel like standing on solid ground and suddenly feeling it move. It is the realization that their life's work may have been built on an incomplete foundation, a patchwork model that used invisible forces like dark matter and dark energy to paper over cracks that have now become wide enough to fall through. On Reddit and in private Discord communities, the impossible universe became a mythic battleground where developer leaks were used to fuel the idea that the Big Bang model wasn't just being refined, but was actively collapsing. The most disturbing implication, however, is not the speed of galaxy formation, but the chronology inversion crisis. In standard physics, we treat the telescope as a simple time machine. To look further is to look further back. But the law vault hints at a more radical, unsettling hypothesis, that at the extreme edge of the observable universe, we are not looking at a linear past. Instead, Webb may be capturing exotic relativistic effects or unknown space-time phenomena that distort cosmic chronology itself. If this is true, the light we are seeing is not a simple image of the early universe, but a delayed message from a reality that does not follow our laws of cause and effect. We are witnessing a fracture where two versions of the cosmos might overlap, a boundary where the rules of our 5% reality, the part made of atoms and light, give way to the 95% we cannot see or explain. This is why some Nobel laureates are now openly warning that this is not our universe. They are looking at the golden eye and realizing it has seen too far. It has peered past the limit of what humanity was meant to witness and found a continent on the other side that doesn't belong to us. The silence at the edge of the universe is no longer empty. It is a crowded, violent, and impossibly mature landscape that existed before the stars were supposed to be born. We are now forced to ask a question that moves beyond equations and into the realm of cosmic horror. If the universe didn't follow the rules we wrote for its birth, then what kind of rules is it following now? We built Webb to find our origins, but it may have found our replacement, a deeper, older structure that has been staring back at us through the golden eye since the very first moment we dared to look. The transition from a precision cosmology era to one of institutional vertigo is now complete. We are no longer in the business of confirming what we know. We are in a desperate race to understand why the universe refused to stay understood. Every photon captured by the gold-plated mirrors is a needle prick to the fabric of our reality, a reminder that the golden eye was never just a telescope. It was a key to a door we didn't know existed, and now that it's open, we are seeing the skeleton of a giant that was finished before the skin of our universe had even begun to form. The silence at L2 is not just the absence of sound, it is the hushed, terrified awe of a species that just realized it is living in a different universe than the one it has been charting for a century. And as the data continues to stream back from the edge of existence, that silence is beginning to scream. To understand the scale of the impossible universe, you have to imagine standing in the absolute center of the Sahara Desert, surrounded by nothing but a flat, featureless horizon of sand that stretches for 1,000 miles in every direction. Your task is to document the birth of a civilization from scratch. You set up a camera for a 2-year time-lapse, expecting to see the slow, agonizing crawl of progress. The first nomadic tents, then perhaps a small well, followed by mud brick huts centuries later. You hit play, and in the first 30 seconds of the footage, a 50-story skyscraper of steel and glass is already piercing the clouds. Inside, the lobby is finished with polished marble, the elevators are running, and people are sitting at tables eating lunch. You wouldn't say the building is a miracle, you would say there is something fundamentally wrong with the tape of reality. You would realize that the construction schedule you've been taught your entire life is not just a little bit off, it is a complete fiction. This is the exact sensation that hit the global scientific community in the summer of 2022, and it is a vertigo that has only deepened with every new gigabyte of data streaming down from the golden eye. When the first deep-field images from the James Webb Space Telescope were released, they were presented to the public as beautiful, glittering wallpapers of a distant past. But for the researchers at the Space Telescope Science Institute, these images were a crime scene. In a patch of sky no larger than a grain of sand held at arm's length, Webb revealed thousands of galaxies, each a city of hundreds of billions of stars. This wasn't supposed to happen. According to the Lambda cold dark matter model, the ironclad framework that has governed our understanding of the Big Bang for 70 years, the early universe should have been a dim, chaotic fog of hydrogen and helium gas. We expected to see proto-galaxies, small, messy smudges of a few million stars just beginning to pull themselves together under the patient, grinding hand of gravity. Instead, Webb saw universe breakers, mature, structured, and massive galaxies that were already fully formed when the universe was barely 3% of its current age. The numbers simply do not add up. Building a galaxy is a multi-stage process that requires hundreds of millions, if not billions of years. First, the invisible scaffolding of dark matter must clump together to create a gravitational well. Then, primordial gas must fall into that well, but it doesn't just ignite. It has to cool down first, because hot gas resists the compression needed for starbirth. Finally, the first stars have to live, die, and explode as supernovae to seed the surrounding area with heavy elements so that the next generation of stars can form. You cannot build a skyscraper before the foundation is dry, yet Webb found the penthouse finished before the first shovel had even hit the ground. One specific galaxy, designated Glass Z13, was found to exist just 300 million years after the Big Bang. It wasn't a primitive clump, it was a structured system containing billions of stars. To put that in perspective, our own Milky Way has had over 13 billion years to reach its current size. Glass Z13 did it in less than 2% of that time. This discovery triggered what insiders are now calling the crisis of precision. Behind the scenes, the scientific community isn't just recalculating. They are experiencing a profound intellectual vertigo. For a generation of cosmologists, the Standard Model was more than just a theory. It was the foundation of their entire reality. Now they are staring at screens showing galaxies that, by the laws of physics they have spent 40 years refining, simply should not be there. Leading researchers like Joel Leger and Ivo Labbé have used words like astounding and universe breakers to describe the data. They are looking at galaxies as massive as our own Milky Way, existing in an era where the total amount of ordinary matter in the universe shouldn't have even been enough to build them. It's as if you walked into a room and found more people inside than could physically fit through the door. The equations are breaking, but the mystery goes deeper than just the size of these galaxies. It's their maturity that is truly disturbing. Webb has detected galaxies like GS 9209, which isn't just massive, it's dead. In astronomy, a dead galaxy is one that has already used up its fuel and stopped forming new stars. This ancient system managed to form hundreds of billions of stars and then retire, all within the first 2 billion years of cosmic history. It lived an entire productive life and went quiet before its neighbors had even finished building their first house. We are seeing evidence of multiple generations of stellar evolution, stars that formed, died in catastrophic explosions, and recycled their heavy elements into new stars, all compressed into a window of time that physics says is far too narrow. Some of these galaxies even show spiral structures, elegant, organized arms that require stable, long-term rotation to form. In the early universe, where everything should have been a violent, chaotic mess of collisions, finding an organized spiral like the Big Wheel is like finding a perfectly functioning clock in the middle of a plane crash. This has led to a narrative of institutional panic that rarely makes it into the glossy press releases. While NASA officially speaks of refining models, the Law Vault suggests that researchers are privately describing sleepless nights spent staring at structures that physics should not allow. There is a growing sense that the lambda cold dark matter model is a patchwork, a collection of invisible placeholders like dark matter and dark energy used to cover up cracks that are now becoming too wide to ignore. On Reddit and in private Discord communities, the impossible universe has become a mythic battleground. Developer leaks from within major institutions suggest that the panic is real, and that the scientific community is quietly scrambling to defend a Big Bang model that feels increasingly like it's collapsing. The implications of these skyscrapers in the Sahara are pushing some to explore the most radical theories ever conceived in physics. If the galaxies form too fast for gravity, then perhaps the very laws of the universe were different in the beginning. Or, more unsettlingly, perhaps our understanding of time is what's broken. This brings us to the chronology inversion hypothesis, the idea that at the edge of the observable universe, we aren't looking at a linear, straightforward past. We treat telescopes as time machines, assuming that looking further out always means looking further back, but Webb may be capturing exotic relativistic effects that distort cosmic chronology itself. We might not be seeing the early universe at all, but rather a fracture in reality where two different versions of the cosmos overlap, or where something far older than our universe is bleeding through the seams. As the golden eye continues to stare into the dark, it isn't finding the empty, primitive dawn we were promised. It is finding a universe that was already ancient in its infancy, a landscape of monsters and giants that existed before the light was even supposed to be turned on. We thought we were building a tool to find our origins, but we may have accidentally built a key to a door that was never meant to be opened. The silence at the edge of the universe is no longer the silence of an empty room. It is the hushed, terrified awe of a species that just realized the skyscraper in the distance shouldn't exist, yet there it is, glittering with a maturity that mocks our every equation. The construction schedule is wrong, the tape of reality is broken, and the golden eye is the only thing brave enough to watch the scream of that silence as the skyscrapers in the Sahara continue to multiply. Just as we began to grapple with the impossible maturity of the universe breakers, the James Webb Space Telescope turned its golden eye toward an even more unsettling feature of the primordial dark, a phenomenon that has left the scientific community not just puzzled, but profoundly disturbed. Scattered across the most ancient horizons of the cosmos, where the light is stretched thin and red by the very expansion of space-time, Webb began to detect what researchers have nicknamed the little red dots. At first glance, they appear as nothing more than tiny, crimson blemishes on the deep field images, pinpricks of blood-red light that the human eye was never meant to see. But as the data began to pile up, these little red dots revealed themselves to be far more than a statistical fluke. They are unexpectedly abundant, appearing in staggering numbers across every survey, standing like eerie sentinels at the edge of time itself. In August 2025, a research team identified 300 of these unusually bright, compact objects in the early universe, a number that defies every expectation of a messy and chaotic cosmic dawn. According to our ironclad models of the Big Bang, the first few 100 million years should have been a time of gradual, irregular assembly. We expected to find diffuse, disorganized clouds of gas struggling to ignite into the first stars. Instead, we found these. They are not messy, they are impossibly compact and terrifyingly organized, appearing as cosmic embryos that have somehow achieved a density and stability that physics says shouldn't be possible for another several billion years. As you stare at these crimson dots on a high-resolution monitor at the Space Telescope Science Institute, a sense of institutional vertigo begins to set in. These objects are too red to be ordinary stars and too small to be mature galaxies. This has led to a fierce, almost desperate debate behind closed doors. Some researchers argue that we are seeing the birth of supermassive black holes, monsters that skipped the slow growth stages and arrived in the universe fully formed. But others, leaning into the deep lore found in private Discord communities and leaked institutional anxieties, suspect something far more radical. They frame these dots not as objects of matter, but as scars in space-time, localized fractures where the fabric of our reality is being pulled and distorted by forces we have yet to name. The sentinel metaphor is not merely poetic. It reflects a growing fear that these dots are actually guardians of a boundary we were never supposed to cross. If these are cosmic embryos, then what exactly are they gestating? One leading, high-retention theory suggests we are witnessing black hole stars, theoretical hybrids where a massive black hole sits at the core of a bloated, luminous envelope of gas. These are monsters that don't fit into any textbook, hybrids that exist in a state of permanent, violent equilibrium, radiating with a ferocity that mocks our current understanding of stellar physics. The little red dots are the first visible evidence of this hybrid reality, a class of objects that was not supposed to exist until Webb forced them into the light. But the scars in space-time hypothesis takes the horror a step further. If these dots are scars, it implies that the birth of our universe was not a clean expansion, but a violent tearing, a chronology inversion, where the rules of cause and effect were mangled from the very start. On Reddit and in fringe cosmology circles, the theory is gaining traction. What if these dots aren't in our universe, but are actually leaks from a previous cosmos or a mirrored reality bleeding through the seams. This would explain their impossible density and their compact, sentinel-like appearance. They are not building blocks of our universe, but remnants of whatever came before, delayed messages from a reality that doesn't follow our laws of physics. This is the point where the scientific community begins to splinter. The public hears about refining models, but the internal reality is one of institutional panic. For a cosmologist who has spent 40 years believing in the slow crawl of galaxy formation, the sight of 300 mature red sentinels at the edge of the universe is a psychological blow. It feels like standing on solid ground and suddenly realizing the ground is an illusion. The little red dots are the first cracks in the floorboards. They represent a crisis of precision, where our measurements are so accurate that they are proving our theories to be fictional. The compactness of these eerie sentinels is perhaps their most disturbing trait. In our local neighborhood, a galaxy with the mass of the Milky Way is spread across 100,000 light-years. But Webb is finding that same mass, hundreds of billions of stars, crammed into a space barely a few hundred light-years wide. It is a density that should lead to immediate gravitational collapse, yet these little red dots remain stable, glowing with a persistent crimson light that shouldn't be there. They are universe breakers in the truest sense, defying the Eddington limit, the physical ceiling on how much radiation a concentrated mass can emit before it blows itself apart. In the quiet late-night hours of data analysis, some researchers have begun to refer to them as glitches in the simulation, a phrase that has escaped from Reddit boards into the hallways of major laboratories. If the universe is a construction, then the little red dots are the developer tools left behind, the marks of an architect who was in a hurry to build this skyscraper in the Sahara before the foundations were even dry. They are the cosmic embryos of a reality that is far more efficient, more violent, and more ancient than we were prepared to handle. We are no longer looking for our origins, we are performing a cosmic archaeology on a civilization of light that existed before the stars were supposed to be born. Every little red dot is a chapter of a book we don't know how to read, a message from before time that hints at a universe where structure is the rule and randomness is the exception. We thought we were seeing the beginning of our story, but the eerie sentinels suggest we are actually seeing the end of a much older one, a skeleton of a giant that was already finished when we thought the universe was just a baby. As we move deeper into the data, the silence from NASA regarding these specific anomalies becomes louder. The law vault suggests that the little red dots are being downplayed because they represent a fracture that cannot be patched with dark matter or dark energy placeholders. They are a direct challenge to the chronology inversion crisis, the unsettling possibility that the further we look, the more we are seeing a mirrored universe, where time flows backward and maturity precedes birth. The sentinels are watching us watch them, and in their crimson glow the story of our universe is beginning to unravel. The little red dots remain unresolved, a live scientific detective story where every new paper changes the interpretation of these cosmic embryos. Are they black hole stars? Are they scars from a previous Big Bang? Or are they the first visible signs of a mirrored reality that is currently colliding with our own? Whatever they are, they have ended the era of precision and ushered in the era of vertigo. The golden eye has seen too far, and the eerie sentinels at the edge of the universe are the only ones who know exactly what lies on the other side of the door we just kicked open. If the skyscrapers in the Sahara left the scientific community in a state of intellectual vertigo, it was the engines at the heart of those buildings that finally shattered our understanding of the cosmic timeline. We have always believed that everything in this universe has a parent, that stars are born from gas, and black holes are born from the deaths of stars. This is the maternal logic of the cosmos. A massive star lives fast, exhausts its nuclear fuel, and collapses, leaving behind a seed black hole of perhaps 10 or 50 solar masses. From there, according to every textbook we've ever written, these seeds grow by slowly, patiently devouring the surrounding gas over billions of years. But at the edge of existence, the James Webb Space Telescope has found a population of monsters without mothers, supermassive black holes already containing the mass of millions, even billions of suns, sitting in an era where the very first stars shouldn't have even finished their first few million years of life. This is more than a scientific discrepancy. It is a fundamental challenge to the laws of physical growth. To understand why these ancient giants are impossible, you have to understand the Eddington limit, the cosmic speed limit for eating. As a black hole feeds, the material falling in doesn't just vanish, it swirls into a violent, superheated accretion disk that glows with the ferocity of a billion suns. This radiation creates an intense outward pressure, literally pushing away the very gas the black hole is trying to consume. If a black hole tries to eat too fast, it chokes on its own light. Under this ironclad law, a stellar mass black hole can only double its mass every few tens of millions of years. The math is devastating for our current models. If you start with a normal seed of 20 solar masses right after the Big Bang and feed it at the absolute maximum rate permitted by the laws of physics, it would take nearly 1 billion years to reach the supermassive scales we are seeing. Yet, Webb is detecting active, feeding monsters at redshifts corresponding to a time when the universe was only 400 or 500 million years old. Some even more disturbing detections hint at light sources, likely massive black holes, from just 100 million years after the beginning. It is the ultimate garden hose problem. You are trying to fill a swimming pool in 30 seconds using only a garden hose. The hose has a physical limit on the flow rate, and the universe doesn't allow you to cheat. Unless, as some researchers are now desperately proposing, the monsters without mothers never had a childhood at all. This brings us to the direct collapse theory, a radical, frightening alternative to the standard birth of structure. In the impossible universe revealed by the Golden Eye, certain regions of space may have bypassed the star formation stage entirely. Instead of gas fragmenting into millions of small stars, an entire primordial cloud of hydrogen and helium, perhaps 100,000 times the mass of the Sun, might have experienced a single, catastrophic gravitational failure. Imagine a massive cloud that should have become a galaxy of stars, but instead of igniting into light, it simply collapsed. In one violent, silent event, it imploded directly into a black hole of 100,000 solar masses. No star lived, no star died. The black hole was born as a giant. But for this to happen, the conditions had to be forbidden. The gas cloud had to be kept warm, preventing it from cooling and breaking into small star-sized clumps. This requires intense ultraviolet radiation from a nearby already established galaxy to strip away the molecular hydrogen, the primary cooling agent of the early universe. This creates a chicken-and-the-egg horror story that has triggered a profound institutional panic. If supermassive black holes require nearby galaxies to form through direct collapse, but galaxies require the gravitational scaffolding of black holes to form quickly, then which one was the architect? Webb's data is increasingly suggesting a reality where the seeds were the giants all along. If the black holes arrived first, it flips the entire formation story on its head. It suggests that we don't live in a universe of gradual, organic growth, but in a skeleton of a giant that was seeded with monstrous anchors from the very first second of existence. Behind the scenes at major institutions, the developer leaks found in the Law Vault suggest that the presence of these monsters without mothers is being treated as a sign of something even more unsettling than a simple physics error. On Reddit and in private Discord communities, theorists are leaning into the chronology inversion hypothesis, the idea that these black holes aren't just objects, but as scars in space-time, localized fractures where the fabric of our reality was torn from the very start. They are viewed as sentinels guarding a boundary we were never supposed to cross, points where the rules of our 5% reality give way to something ancient and perhaps mirrored. Some researchers are now looking at the little red dots, SLAR-D, and seeing not just galaxies, but black hole stars, theoretical hybrids where a massive black hole sits at the core of a bloated, luminous envelope of gas. These are monsters that fit into no textbook, radiating with a ferocity that mocks the Eddington limit and suggests the early universe was a factory of impossible objects. The presence of these LRDs, which appear in staggering numbers across every survey, suggests that the monsters without mothers aren't outliers, they are the rule. This has led to the crisis of cosmological precision. If our model of the first 5% of the universe is this fundamentally broken, then the remaining 95%, the dark matter and dark energy we have used as placeholders, may be nothing more than a fiction we use to keep the equations from screaming. For a senior cosmologist, staring at 100,000 solar mass seed that appeared in the Dark Ages, the sensation is one of profound vertigo. It is the realization that their life's work was built on an incomplete foundation, a patchwork model that finally cracked open when Webb turned its golden eye toward the edge. We are finding that the universe was already ancient in its infancy, a landscape where supermassive monsters were the first things to wake up in the dark. The direct collapse theory isn't just a solution, it's an admission that the construction schedule of reality was accelerated by forces we cannot yet name. We thought we were witnessing the slow, messy birth of our cosmos, but the monsters without mothers suggest we are actually witnessing the cosmic echo of a much older, more violent structure that existed before the stars were ever meant to shine. The forbidden eye has looked too deep, and it has seen the monsters without mothers feeding in the darkness of the primordial dawn. They stand as evidence of a chronology inversion that denies our every law of cause and effect. And as the data continues to stream back from Lagrange point 2, the silence from the institutional gatekeepers grows heavier, because they know that these black holes don't just skip the growth stage, they skip the very story of us. We are no longer looking at our past, we are performing a cosmic archaeology on a reality that was finished before we even arrived. The skyscrapers in the Sahara were built around these impossible engines, and the golden eye is the only thing brave enough to watch as the impossible universe continues to rewrite its own origins, one monster at a time. Up until now, we have been arguing about the scale of the buildings, the impossible mass of the universe breakers, and the terrifying engines of the monsters without mothers. We have treated this as a problem of construction, a garden hose issue where the universe simply filled its swimming pool too fast. But as the golden eye of Webb continues to stare into the abyss, a much more unsettling realization is beginning to dawn on the scientific community. A realization that has moved from the pages of the law vault into the hushed, late-night corridors of our greatest institutions. The problem might not be the galaxies themselves. The problem might be the very nature of the time we are using to measure them. We have been taught that the James Webb Space Telescope is a linear time machine, a simple instrument where looking further into the dark always means looking further back into a straightforward, chronological past. But what if that is the ultimate 13-billion-year-old lie? This brings us to the chronology inversion, the most radical and disturbing pivot in the history of modern cosmology. In the standard model, the universe is a neat, orderly tape of reality that we are simply rewinding, but the data from the edge suggests the tape is not just stretched, it is broken. We are seeing galaxies that look too old, not because they grew up in a hurry, but because they might not belong to our timeline at all. Some Nobel laureates and deep law theorists are now asking the unthinkable. Is Webb actually seeing the edge of our beginning, or are we witnessing a fracture in time itself? This is no longer a debate about galaxy mass. It is an exploration into cosmic horror, the idea that at the extreme limits of the observable universe, we are witnessing exotic relativistic effects or unknown space-time phenomena that distort cosmic chronology itself. Imagine the universe not as a single stream of time, but as a mirrored reflection, a place where the rules of our 5% reality give way to a deeper, older structure that has been staring back at us since the first moment we dared to look. The law vault contains the chronology inversion hypothesis, which suggests that looking at the edge of the universe isn't a glimpse of our infancy, but a delayed message from a reality that does not follow our laws of cause and effect. In this framework, those impossible galaxies aren't just early, they are intrusions. They are remnants of a previous cosmos or an overlap from another dimension that is bleeding through the seams of our space-time. This is why the scientific community is experiencing such profound institutional vertigo. If the universe is a construction, then we have found the place where the developer tools were left behind, the marks of an architect who didn't follow the construction schedule we spent 70 years writing. For a senior cosmologist who has spent a lifetime refining simulations of a slow, grinding universe, the data from Webb feels like standing on solid ground and suddenly feeling it move. It is the realization that their life's work was built on an incomplete foundation, a patchwork model that used invisible placeholders like dark matter and dark energy to paper over cracks that have now become wide enough to fall through. One of the most chilling pieces of evidence for this fracture isn't a photo, but a sound, or rather, a frequency. While measuring the background noise of the universe, Webb's instruments detected a faint, rhythmic oscillation that does not match any known pulsar or gravitational wave. It is a non-random mathematical pattern that some have begun to call the heartbeat beyond time. If this frequency is real, it suggests an encoded pattern in the fabric of the universe, a message from before time that hints at a reality where structure is the rule and randomness is the exception. This heartbeat suggests that the skeleton of a giant was already finished when we thought the universe was just a baby, and that we are living inside a graveyard empire built from the corpses of whatever came before. Then there is the cosmic echo. In 2024, a light signature from the edge of the observable universe was expected to fade and vanish, as all distant sources eventually do. Instead, it reappeared, not from the same direction or time, but with the identical spectral fingerprint. This echo implies that light might be bouncing back from something at the edge, something capable of reflecting radiation that shouldn't even be there. This leads to two terrifying possibilities. Either the universe is finite and closed, meaning space curves back on itself, or our light hit a boundary, a fracture, where our universe ends and something else begins. This fracture narrative is where the little red dots and the monsters without mothers finally make sense. If we are seeing a chronology inversion, then these objects aren't growing at all. They are already mature because they were imported into our timeline from a previous cyclic bounce or a mirrored universe where time flows in reverse. This transforms the James Webb Space Telescope from a scientific instrument into a tool of cosmic archaeology, performing an excavation on a civilization of light that existed before the stars were ever meant to shine. We aren't looking at our past, we are looking at our replacement, a deeper, older structure that has been watching us from the other side of the door we just kicked open. The anxiety within scientific institutions is no longer about tensions in the numbers, it is a crisis of reality itself. While the public is fed stories about refining models, the law vault reveals a world of sleepless nights and institutional panic. Researchers are staring at screens showing galaxies that, by the laws of physics they have spent 40 years refining, simply should not be there. On Reddit and in private Discord communities, the impossible universe has become a mythic battleground where developer leaks suggest that the Big Bang model isn't just being adjusted, it is actively collapsing. This is the era of vertigo, where every new gigabyte of data from Webb is a needle prick to the fabric of our existence, a reminder that the golden eye has seen too far. The chronology inversion means we must abandon the comfortable idea that we are the protagonists of a slow, organic growth story. Instead, we are living in a universe that appears to have already been ancient in its infancy, a landscape where supermassive monsters were the first things to wake up in the dark. This doesn't mean the Big Bang was wrong in every detail, but it means the story is incomplete, missing a chapter at the very beginning that might never be recoverable through standard observation. Webb has shown us that the universe is under no obligation to remain within the boundaries of our elegance or our construction schedules. If time itself is fractured at the edge, then the Hubble tension and the 9% discrepancy are not just measurement errors, they are structural failures of our reality. Two rigorous methods are giving two different speeds of expansion simultaneously, a sentence that sounds absurd but reflects the data precisely. This suggests that the expansion of the universe, the very clock that governs everything, might be running at different speeds depending on which fracture of time you are looking at. We are no longer in the precision cosmology era. We are in the era of the mirrored horizon, where the golden eye has found a continent on the other side of reality that doesn't belong to us. As we pivot into this new understanding, we have to ask the most disturbing question of all. If we are seeing a mirrored universe or a previous cosmos, is it possible that our own future has already happened? Are we merely the cosmic echo of a much older, more violent structure that has already reached its conclusion? The silence at Lagrange point 2 is no longer the silence of an empty room. It is the hushed, terrified awe of a species that just realized the skyscraper in the distance shouldn't exist, yet it is glittering with a maturity that mocks our every equation. We thought we were building a tool to find our origins, but we may have accidentally built a key to a door that was never meant to be opened, a door that reveals the skeleton of a giant that was finished before the skin of our universe had even begun to form. The data is screaming, and the message is clear. Our map of the universe is not just incomplete, it is a map of a different world. We are drifting on the edge of something ancient, massive, and indifferent, a universe behind the universe. And as the golden eye continues to stare into the dark, it is finding that the further we look, the more we are seeing a reality where maturity precedes birth, where structure is the rule, and where the silence at the edge of the universe is beginning to scream. We are now forced to face the truth that a Nobel Prize winner warned us about. This is not our universe. We are merely guests in a reality that is far more efficient, more violent, and more ancient than we were ever prepared to handle. If we zoom out far enough, the universe ceases to be a collection of individual, lonely galaxies and reveals itself as the most complex architecture in existence, a shimmering, three-dimensional network known as the cosmic web. For decades, our standard model of cosmology described this web as the final masterpiece of a 13-billion-year construction project, a delicate arrangement of thin filaments and vast, empty voids that only reached maturity after eons of patient gravitational grinding. We were taught that the early universe was a uniform soup, a featureless hot fog of hydrogen and helium where matter was distributed so perfectly that the density variations were barely 1 part in 100,000. In this story, the first few 100 million years were supposed to be a time of primordial gas clouds drifting in a silence that stretched across everything, slowly condensing like dew on an invisible spiderweb. But as the James Webb Space Telescope turned its forbidden eye toward the edge of time, it revealed that the spider was much faster and much more terrifying than we ever imagined. What Webb found was the skeleton of a giant, a fully woven infrastructure of cosmic filaments already in place when the universe should have been nothing more than a diffuse mist. In early 2023, data began to stream back from a region of the ancient cosmos that left researchers in a state of profound institutional vertigo. They had discovered the cosmic vine. This wasn't a single universe-breaker galaxy or a lone black hole monster. It was a massive chain of more than 20 closely packed galaxies stretching over 13 million light-years across the primordial dark. To find such a structure just a few billion years after the Big Bang is like watching a time-lapse of a forest and seeing the underground fungal network and the towering branches of 1,000 trees appear in the first split second. The skeleton of the universe was finished before the skin had even begun to form. The standard construction schedule of the cosmos is now in total collapse because these filaments are not supposed to be there yet. According to the lambda cold dark matter model, the invisible scaffolding of dark matter takes billions of years to clump together into the elongated threads that channel the flow of gas and matter. We expected to find proto-filaments, messy and undeveloped trails of gas just beginning to feel the pull of gravity. Instead, Webb showed us highly organized cosmic vines that were already quenching, meaning the galaxies within these chains had already lived through their entire star-forming lives and gone dead. These galaxies had burned through their fuel, shut down their factories, and settled into a retired state in an era when the universe itself was still a toddler. They were already ancient in their infancy, inhabiting a massive graveyard of light that shouldn't have even been built yet. This discovery has forced a crisis of precision that is tearing through scientific institutions like a physical weight. While the official NASA press releases speak of refining our understanding of structure formation, the law vault suggests a far more desperate scramble behind closed doors. If the cosmic web is already mature in the first 5% of cosmic history, then our entire understanding of gravity and dark matter is a patchwork model used to cover cracks that have now become wide enough to fall through. Some researchers are privately admitting that the invisible scaffolding of dark matter might not be the slow-growing seed we thought it was. Instead, it appears that the universe was seeded with monstrous anchors from the very first second, a skeleton of a giant that didn't grow but was perhaps imported or reflected into our reality. This brings us back to the chronology inversion horror. If we are seeing a fully formed web in the deep past, is it possible that Webb isn't looking at the beginning at all? On Reddit and in private Discord communities, the idea is taking hold that these cosmic vines are evidence of a fracture in time itself. We treat the telescope as a linear time machine, but what if these ancient filaments are actually delayed messages from a previous cosmos, or a mirrored reality bleeding through the seams of our space-time? This would explain why the big wheel and other spiral structures appear so early. They didn't have to wait for our laws of physics to build them, because they were already finished in a reality that doesn't follow our rules of cause and effect. We are performing cosmic archaeology on a civilization of light that existed before the stars were ever meant to shine, digging up the bones of a giant that was already dead before our story even started. The scale of this revelation is staggering to the human mind, which evolved to understand distances in miles and time in years. When we look at a 13 million light-year chain of galaxies, we are seeing a structure that challenges the cosmological principle, the idea that the universe is smooth and uniform when you zoom out. Webb is showing us that the universe is lumpy and structured at scales that shouldn't be possible within the age of the cosmos. It is as if we set out to map a desert and found a 10 billion light-year-long wall of cities already standing there. This isn't just a measurement error. It is a structural failure of our reality. We are finding that the voids, where nothing should exist, are actually being drained by these cosmic vines with an efficiency that mocks our best supercomputer simulations. Behind the institutional panic is the realization that if we got the cosmic web this wrong, then 95% of our universe, the part we call dark matter and dark energy, might be nothing more than a fiction we invented to keep the equations from screaming. For a senior cosmologist, staring at the cosmic vine is a source of profound vertigo, the realization that they have been living inside a skeleton of a giant while trying to chart the skin of an embryo. The little red dots and the monsters without mothers are just the pins holding this impossible tapestry together. The real horror is the tapestry itself, a web so mature, so violent, and so ancient that it suggests we are merely guests in a reality that was finished before we even arrived. As the golden eye continues to stream gigabytes of data back to Lagrange point 2, the silence from the institutional gatekeepers grows heavier. They are seeing patterns that make them nervous, alignments in the cosmic web that suggest a preferred direction or a primordial spin to the universe itself. This alignment suggests the universe didn't begin in a random explosion, but followed a blueprint that was already encoded in the fabric of space. Every cosmic vine is a thread in that blueprint, a reminder that the uniform soup of our origins was never truly uniform. It was a map of a different world, a map that Webb has finally allowed us to see. And what we are seeing is that the skyscraper in the Sahara isn't a miracle, it's just the only part of the city that was still lit when we finally looked. The skeleton is out of the closet, and it is bigger than the universe we thought we knew. While the global scientific community was still reeling from the discovery of the cosmic web, the skeleton of a giant that appeared fully woven in an era of primordial mist, the James Webb Space Telescope was quietly preparing to deliver a revelation that would shift the crisis from the realm of architecture into the realm of communication. As Webb's golden eye stared into the absolute, suffocating blackness of the early universe, its sensors began to pick up something that was never supposed to be there, not a smudge of light, not a cluster of stars, but a signal. Among the telescope's most overlooked and unsettling findings is not a visual image, but a strange frequency detected while measuring the background noise of the ancient cosmos. In the hushed, sterile labs of the Space Telescope Science Institute, researchers watching the data streams began to notice a faint, rhythmic oscillation that defied every known law of cosmic randomness. This was not the chaotic, white noise static of the Big Bang's afterglow. It was a non-random mathematical pattern that repeated with a precision that felt almost intentional. This rhythmic pulse, which some astrophysicists have started calling the heartbeat beyond time, represents a structural failure in our understanding of reality. In every model we have built over the last 70 years, the early universe was described as a uniform soup governed by random quantum fluctuations. We expected the background of the universe to be a featureless hiss of radiation. Instead, Webb has detected a mathematical oscillation that does not match any known pulsar, any detected gravitational wave, or any known distortion in the cosmic microwave background. Unlike a pulsar, which is a localized object spinning in a specific corner of space, this strange frequency appears to be encoded into the very fabric of the universe itself, arriving from every direction with a consistency that mocks our every definition of random. This is where the institutional panic moves from a scramble over galaxy masses into a full-blown crisis of existence. If the universe were truly the result of a random, chaotic expansion, there should be no heartbeat, there should be no mathematical rhythm pulsing through the infrared dark. The presence of this non-random oscillation suggests that structure is not something the universe grew into over billions of years. Structure was the rule from the very first second. It hints at an encoded pattern in the fabric of the universe, a blueprint that was already written before the first star was ever meant to ignite. This has led some theorists to suggest that the frequency is a message from before time, a signal from a previous cosmos, or a mirrored reality that existed before our Big Bang. For the senior cosmologists who have spent their careers refining the Standard Model, the detection of this frequency has induced a profound sense of vertigo. They are staring at data that implies the universe didn't begin as a chaotic explosion, but as a pre-constructed system, a graveyard empire built upon the corpses of whatever came before. In private Discord communities and developer leaks from within major research institutions, the narrative is shifting toward cosmic horror. If the frequency is mathematical and non-random, it implies that the universe possesses a preferred direction or a primordial spin, a concept that violates the cosmological principle, the foundational assumption that the universe is the same in every direction. The strange frequency is being framed by some as a glitch in the simulation, or the developer tools left behind by an architect who was in a hurry to build the cosmos. If the universe is a construction, then this frequency is the hum of the machinery, the message from before time, that indicates we are merely guests in a reality that was finished before we even arrived. Some researchers, leaning into the chronology inversion hypothesis, suspect that this rhythmic pulse is actually a delayed message from a reality that doesn't follow our laws of cause and effect. They argue that we are witnessing a fracture in time where the heartbeat of a previous universe is bleeding through the seams of our own. The mathematical nature of the pulse is the most chilling part of the discovery. Randomness is the backbone of our 5% reality, yet this frequency follows a pattern so precise that it has led to comparisons with the skeleton of a giant. If the skeleton was already finished when the universe was a baby, then the frequency is the breath within those bones. It suggests that the skyscrapers in the Sahara, those impossible galaxies that appeared out of nowhere, were not accidents of gravity, but were built according to the mathematical rhythm that Webb has now intercepted. The scientific community is currently splintering over how to address this. The public hears about anomalies and refining models, but the internal reality is one of institutional panic. There is a growing fear that we have looked too deep and seen something we were never meant to witness, a boundary where the rules of our physics give way to something ancient, mirrored, and terrifying. The eerie sentinels of the Crimson Dawn, those little red dots that defy every equation, may simply be the visual manifestation of this frequency, cosmic embryos gestating within a reality that operates on a frequency we are only just beginning to tune into. Is Webb seeing the beginning of our story, or is it performing a cosmic archaeology on a civilization of light that existed before time itself? The strange frequency suggests the latter. It points to a universe where randomness is an illusion, a place where the heartbeat beyond time has been pulsing through the dark for 13 billion years, waiting for a gold-plated mirror 1,000,000 miles from Earth to finally catch its rhythm. As the data continues to stream back from Lagrange Point 2, the silence from the institutional gatekeepers grows heavier because they know that this heartbeat doesn't just skip the growth stage, it skips the very story of us. We thought we were looking at our past, but the strange frequency suggests we are looking at our replacement, a deeper, older structure that has been watching us from the other side of the door we just kicked open. The cosmic echo and the mirrored universe are no longer fringe theories. They are the only narratives that can accommodate a universe that has a heartbeat. Every new gigabyte of data is a needle prick to the fabric of our existence, a reminder that the golden eye has seen too far and found a reality where maturity precedes birth and where the silence at the edge of the universe is beginning to scream in a mathematical language we were never supposed to decode. The transition from a precision cosmology era to one of institutional vertigo is complete. We are no longer in the business of confirming what we know. We are in a desperate race to understand why the universe refused to stay understood. The strange frequency is the final piece of evidence that our map of the universe is not just incomplete, it is a map of a different world altogether. We are drifting on the edge of something ancient, massive, and indifferent, a universe behind the universe. And as the golden eye continues to stare into the dark, it is finding that the further we look, the more we see a reality where the heartbeat beyond time is the only thing that remains certain. We are now forced to face the truth that a Nobel Prize winner warned us about. This is not our universe. We are merely guests in a reality that is far more efficient, more violent, and more ancient than we were ever prepared to handle, and the message from before time is still pulsing, waiting for us to realize that the end of our understanding is only the beginning of a much darker story. While we were still reeling from the strange frequency and the impossible architecture of the cosmic web, a different kind of disaster was unfolding in the data. A disaster that doesn't involve what we see, but how fast the universe itself is tearing apart. There is a clock that governs every atom in existence, a fundamental rhythm to the expansion of space, and we have just realized that the clock is broken. For decades, cosmology rested on a single, elegant framework known as the Standard Model, which described the universe with an almost suspicious level of precision. But as the James Webb Space Telescope turned its gold-plated mirrors toward the horizon, it didn't just find distant galaxies, it found a structural failure in our reality. This is the Hubble crisis, a 9% discrepancy in the expansion rate that has led Nobel Prize-winning physicist Adam Rees to issue a warning that sounds more like cosmic horror than science. This isn't our universe. To understand why a 9% difference in a number can cause a global scientific crisis, you have to understand the Hubble constant, the single most important number in all of cosmology. It is the speedometer of the universe. It tells us how fast a galaxy is receding for every unit of distance between us and it. Getting this number right is the foundation for everything: the age of the universe, the size of the observable cosmos, and the ultimate fate of reality itself. If you get this number wrong, you don't just miscalculate a distance, you redraw the entire history of everything that has ever existed. For years, we believed we had finally pinned this number down. But the James Webb Space Telescope has exposed a crisis of precision where two different, rigorous measurement methods are giving two different answers simultaneously. That sentence sounds absurd, but it is exactly what the data shows. We are standing in a room with two clocks, both built by the finest engineers in history, and they are ticking at different speeds. This isn't a measurement error, it is a fracture in the nature of time and space. The first method is a form of cosmic archaeology. It looks backward nearly 14 billion years to the very first light of the universe, the cosmic microwave background, CMB. This faint afterglow of radiation was released when the universe was just 380,000 years old, a time when the entire cosmos was a glowing, opaque fog of plasma. The European Space Agency's Planck satellite mapped this ancient light in exquisite detail, capturing the tiny temperature fluctuations that would eventually become galaxies and clusters. By plugging these initial conditions into our standard model, physicists can run the equations forward across 13.8 billion years to predict how fast the universe should be expanding today. The answer is 67 kilometers per second per megaparsec. It is a clean number backed by our most successful physical models. The second method is more direct and immediate. It measures the universe right now using what is called the cosmic distance ladder. This technique, spearheaded by Adam Rees and his team, starts by measuring the distance to nearby pulsating stars called Cepheid variables. These stars act as standard candles because their brightness fluctuates at a rate directly tied to their true luminosity. By comparing how bright they look to how bright they actually are, we can calculate their distance with remarkable accuracy. From there, astronomers step outward to even more distant galaxies containing Type 1a supernovae, exploding stars that all reach roughly the same peak brightness. Using these markers, they can measure exactly how far away a galaxy is and how fast it is moving away from us. The answer they get is 73 kilometers per second per megaparsec. A 6-kilometer difference might seem like a rounding error in daily life, but in fundamental physics it is a catastrophic failure. It is the difference between a universe that is 13.8 billion years old and one that could be a billion years younger. It changes the timeline of when the first stars ignited, when the first heavy elements were forged, and when the conditions for life itself became possible. For a long time, the scientific community didn't panic. They assumed someone had simply made a mistake. The most popular theory was stellar crowding, the idea that Hubble's cameras were blending the light of nearby stars together, making the Cepheids appear brighter than they really were and skewing the distance calculations. Webb was built to be the final arbiter of this Hubble war. With its 6.5-meter golden mirror and its ability to cut through cosmic dust with infrared precision, it was expected to gently deflate the tension. The hope was that Webb would see those stars more clearly, correct the error, and bring the number back down to 67. Crisis averted. But in early 2024, when the data from the SH0ES team was published, the atmosphere at the Space Telescope Science Institute turned from expectation to institutional vertigo. Webb confirmed the 73 value. It saw the stars exactly where Hubble saw them, with even greater clarity, and the distances held. The 9% discrepancy didn't vanish, it became ironclad. With the errors eliminated, we are left with a reality that simply does not fit our equations. This is why Adam Rees, a man who won a Nobel Prize for discovering that the expansion of the universe is accelerating, is now warning us that we have misunderstood the universe. This is the point where the institutional panic moves into the realm of deep law and existential dread. If both measurements are correct, and every piece of data from Webb suggests they are, then there is no third option that keeps our current model of the universe intact. We are no longer debating a number, we are witnessing a structural failure of reality. One of the most disturbing implications is that the expansion of the universe, the very clock that governs everything, is running at different speeds depending on which fracture of time you are looking at. We are seeing a chronology inversion where the rules of our 5% reality give way to something ancient and mirrored. Some theorists are now proposing that there is missing physics hiding in the first few 100,000 years of the cosmos, a brief, violent burst of energy called early dark energy that briefly changed the expansion rate before vanishing, leaving a permanent fingerprint on the mismatch we see today. It's like the universe received an unexpected kick right after it was born, a nudge that rippled through 14 billion years to break our measurements today. But the law vault hints at something even more radical. If the universe is expanding 9% faster than the early universe light says it should, then we are not living in the universe we thought we were. We are seeing the mirrored horizon, a place where our light has hit a boundary, a fracture where our universe ends and something else, something older and more violent, is bleeding through. The Hubble tension is often called the little sibling of the larger crisis, but it is actually the smoking gun of a chronology inversion. It suggests that looking further out into space isn't just looking into the past, it's looking at a reality that follows different laws of cause and effect. It transforms the James Webb Space Telescope from a tool of astronomy into an instrument of cosmic archaeology, excavating a reality that was finished before we even arrived. Behind the polished NASA press releases, there is a desperate scramble. Researchers are describing sleepless nights because they realize their life's work was built on an incomplete foundation, a patchwork model that used dark matter and dark energy as placeholders for cracks that are now 9% wide. If we got the expansion rate this wrong, then 95% of our universe, everything we call dark, might be nothing more than a fiction we invented to keep the equations from screaming. This crisis is now joined by what astronomers call the S8 tension, a second, quieter discrepancy involving how clumpy the universe is. The standard model predicts a certain amount of clustering in the distribution of matter, but when we measure it directly, we find slightly less of it than the math allows. Adam Rees has warned that these two tensions are symptoms of the same underlying problem, a fundamental misunderstanding of the fabric of existence. We are currently living inside a question that has no comfortable answer. The most precisely measured universe in history is telling us two different things at the same time, and the golden eye has confirmed that both are true. This is the era of vertigo, where the ground we trusted has begun to move. We thought we were measuring our own home, but as the expansion rate screams towards 73, we are forced to face the truth. This isn't our universe. We are merely guests in a reality that is far more efficient, more violent, and more ancient than our equations ever prepared us to handle. The silence at Lagrange point 2 is no longer the silence of an empty room, it is the hushed, terrified awe of a species that just realized the clock of the cosmos is ticking with a mathematical rhythm we were never supposed to decode. The skeleton of a giant is fully visible now, and its heart is beating faster than our laws of physics allow. We built Webb to find our origins, but it has found a fracture in time itself, a door that reveals we are drifting on the edge of a universe behind the universe, a place where the rules of the 5% reality have finally reached their limit. And as the strange frequency continues to pulse and the expansion rate continues to defy our models, that 9% gap is becoming the doorway to a much darker story. While the public stares in awe at the vibrant, wallpaper-worthy photographs released by NASA, a far more unsettling story is unfolding behind the locked doors of our most prestigious scientific institutions. What was supposed to be a precision cosmology era, a final victory lap for the standard model, has mutated into an era of institutional vertigo. Behind the polished press releases, the atmosphere at the Space Telescope Science Institute is not one of triumph, but a cold, suffocating silence. The James Webb Space Telescope was built to be the ultimate test of our knowledge, but instead it has become a forbidden instrument that is quietly dismantling the very story we have told ourselves about the universe for 70 years. For a senior cosmologist who has spent 4 decades refining the lambda cold dark matter model, the data streaming back from Lagrange point 2 feels like standing on solid ground and suddenly feeling it move. This is the crisis of precision, the realization that as our instruments become more accurate, the universe becomes less understandable. For years, scientists lived within the comfortable boundaries of a framework that explained the clustering of galaxies and the heat of the Big Bang with an almost suspicious level of precision. But Webb's golden eye has seen too far, and in doing so, it has revealed cracks in the foundation that are now wide enough to fall through. This has triggered a state of productive chaos, a professional and intellectual crisis that is reshaping careers and rewriting grant proposals in real time. While the official line is that we are merely refining our understanding, researchers are privately describing sleepless nights, staring at screens showing universe breakers that physics simply does not allow to exist. This institutional scramble has been made even more volatile by a rare collision between hard astrophysics and internet myth-making. In the age of Hubble, a scientific anomaly might have stayed buried in a peer-reviewed journal for a decade before the public noticed. Today, attention in the data becomes a viral headline in hours. The lore vault of the internet, Reddit threads, YouTube creators, and speculative Discord communities has transformed nuanced scientific debates into a cultural phenomenon. The term impossible universe has become a mythic battleground where the scientific community's internal anxieties are broadcast to millions. NASA is no longer just defending its models against other scientists, it is defending a Big Bang story that feels increasingly like a patchwork against an army of digital theorists who are quick to spot the gaps. On subreddits dedicated to space and cosmology, the narrative of the patchwork model is gaining unstoppable momentum. Users argue that dark matter and dark energy are not real substances, but invisible placeholders, cosmic fillers used to paper over the fact that our gravitational equations are fundamentally broken. To these internet theorists, the mature galaxies appearing just 300 million years after the Big Bang are not surprises. They are the smoking gun proof that the standard construction schedule of the cosmos is a fiction. This digital descent has created a new kind of pressure on researchers. When a study mentions a 9% discrepancy in the expansion rate, Reddit doesn't see a measurement challenge, it sees a structural failure of reality. The most disturbing part of this institutional scramble involves the developer leaks, found in the deeper corners of the lore. In private Discord channels, rumors circulate that researchers are admitting the data is far stranger than what is being publicly stated. They describe the little red dots and the monsters without mothers not as outliers, but as a systematic pattern of an impossible universe that was already ancient in its infancy. These leaked anxieties suggest that the scientific community is quietly scrambling to protect its funding and its reputation, while the very fabric of their reality is tearing at the seams. The chronology inversion hypothesis, the idea that time itself may be fractured at the edge of the universe, has moved from a fringe nightmare into a serious topic of late-night debate. This crisis is also generational. There is a profound human weight to this story that a photograph of a galaxy cannot capture. Imagine a senior researcher who has spent 30 years developing supercomputer simulations based on the standard model. Every student they trained and every paper they published was built on a set of assumptions that Webb is now systematically dismantling. At major conferences, the tension is palpable. One photograph from a 2023 presentation captures a row of senior cosmologists staring at Webb's results. Their faces are a mix of attentive focus and hard-to-read dread. They are realizing that their life's work may have been an excavation of a continent that shouldn't be there, on a map of a different world. Meanwhile, junior scientists find themselves in a strange limbo. They are entering a field they expected to be in its finishing phase, only to find it at the beginning of a terrifying new paradigm. Some find it energizing, the chance to be the ones who write the next set of laws. Others find it destabilizing, as the grant money and prestige still follow the consensus that seems to be collapsing. The crisis of precision has created a productive chaos where old rivalries are being set aside because the new data is so overwhelming that no single camp can claim victory. The institutional gatekeepers now face a choice. Admit that the timeline is not just in question, but broken, or continue to add patches to a model that is struggling to hold the weight of Webb's discoveries. Every time they propose a solution like direct collapse black holes or efficient star formation, it feels to the digital public like another epicycle, a complex addition to a theory that is trying to avoid being proven wrong. The Internet versus the cosmos dynamic means that the silence from NASA regarding specific anomalies is being interpreted as a coded admission of defeat. The law vault suggests that the scientific community is now performing cosmic archaeology on a civilization of light that existed before the stars were even meant to shine. They are digging up the skeleton of a giant that was finished before the skin of our universe had even begun to form. This realization has led to an institutional panic because it suggests that we are not the protagonists of a slow, organic growth story, but merely guests in a reality that was finished long before we arrived. The strange frequency, the rhythmic heartbeat beyond time, has become the ultimate symbol of this crisis. If the universe has a heartbeat, it isn't an accident of gas and gravity. It is an encoded pattern, a message from before time, that indicates our map of the universe is a map of a mirrored reality we were never supposed to see. As the golden eye continues to stare into the abyss, the 9% discrepancy of the Hubble crisis stands as the final, unyielding guard at the door of the old world. It is a structural failure of reality that cannot be explained away as a measurement error. It is the smoke from a fire that is burning through the halls of every major astronomical institution. The precision cosmology era is dead, and in its place is a terrifying era of vertigo where the ground we trusted has begun to move. We are no longer confirming what we know. We are in a desperate race to understand why the universe refused to stay understood. The human story of the James Webb Space Telescope is the story of a species that realized it was late to the party. We built a $10 billion time machine to see the beginning, but the beginning was already crowded with mature structures that mock our every equation. The institutional scramble is a reaction to the realization that the universe does not wait for our equations to give it permission to exist. It is building cathedrals while we are still trying to understand the mud. As the data continues to stream back to Lagrange point 2, the silence from the gatekeepers is the sound of a paradigm shifting, a shift that reveals we are merely the cosmic echo of a much older, more violent structure that has already reached its conclusion. The impossible universe is not a scientific problem to be solved. It is a new reality to be endured, and the golden eye is the only thing brave enough to watch as the story of us is quietly replaced by a story we are not yet prepared to read. We have arrived at the final horizon of our understanding, a point where the golden eye has stared so deeply into the void that the reflection coming back is no longer our own. For decades, we lived within the comfortable mathematical safety of the 5% reality, the sliver of existence made of atoms, light, and a linear progression of time that we thought we had mastered. We believed that the James Webb Space Telescope would be the ultimate witness to our origins, a machine that would capture a baby picture of a fragile, messy infant universe. Instead, we have found ourselves performing a cosmic archaeology on a reality that was finished before we even arrived. We are no longer looking at the past, we are looking at the limit of what our physics allows, and what lies beyond that limit is a continent of existence that doesn't belong to us. The first sign that we had reached the edge of our own reality wasn't a discovery of matter, but a discovery of its absence. We have known for a long time that everything we see, every star, every galaxy, every human being, is merely 5% of the total energy content of the universe. The remaining 95% has been hidden behind the placeholders we call dark matter and dark energy, invisible fictions we invented to keep our equations from screaming. But as Webb peered into the ancient dark, it found that even the 5% we thought we understood was a lie. The skyscrapers in the Sahara and the monsters without mothers revealed a universe that was already ancient in its infancy, a structure so mature and so complex that the construction schedule of our reality is exposed as a complete fiction. This is the ultimate institutional vertigo, the realization that we are merely guests in a reality that doesn't follow the rules we wrote for its birth. This vertigo reached a fever pitch with the detection of the cosmic echo. In 2024, a light signature from the very edge of the observable universe was expected to fade and vanish into the expanding dark. Instead, it reappeared not from the same direction or time, but with an identical spectral fingerprint. This echo implies that light at the edge of existence is hitting a boundary, a fracture, where our universe ends and something else begins. There are only two possibilities that can explain this echo, and both are terrifying. Either the universe is finite and closed, meaning space curves back on itself, or our light has hit the horizon of the mirror, a place where our reality is reflected back at us by a cosmos that exists on the other side of time. This leads us into the mirrored universe hypothesis, a concept that was once dismissed as fringe lore, but has now become the only narrative that can accommodate Webb's data. This is not a metaphor, it is a physical possibility that there exists a reality where time flows in the opposite direction and the laws of physics run backward relative to ours. The little red dots, those eerie sentinels at the edge of time, are seen by some as leaks from this mirrored reality, bleeding through the seams of our space-time. They appear too old and too mature because they weren't grown in our timeline. They were imported from a cosmos that was already finished when ours was just beginning. We are witnessing a chronology inversion where maturity precedes birth and where the skeleton of a giant was already woven before the skin of our universe had even formed. The strange frequency, the rhythmic heartbeat beyond time, is the final mathematical proof of this mirrored structure. It is a non-random mathematical oscillation that repeats with a precision that feels almost intentional, a message from before time encoded into the very fabric of the universe. This heartbeat suggests that the universe didn't begin in a random explosion, but followed a blueprint that was already written in a previous cosmos or a mirrored reality. The 9% discrepancy in the Hubble crisis is the smoking gun of this fracture. It reveals that the expansion of the universe, the very clock that governs everything, is running at different speeds depending on which fracture of time you are looking at. This is not a measurement error, it is a structural failure of reality. This brings us to the Nobel warning issued by Adam Rees. This isn't our universe. We built the James Webb Space Telescope to find our origins, but we have accidentally built a key to a door that was never meant to be opened. When we look through that door, we don't see a baby picture of ourselves. We see a continent on the other side that belongs to something ancient, massive, and indifferent. We have looked past the 5% reality of atoms and light and found ourselves drifting on the edge of a universe behind the universe. The golden eye has seen too far, and it has found that the silence at the edge of existence is beginning to scream in a mathematical language we were never supposed to decode. The institutional panic within the scientific community is the sound of a paradigm shifting. Researchers are staring at screens showing universe breakers that physics does not allow to exist, realizing that their life's work was built on an incomplete foundation. The internet versus the cosmos battleground reflects this desperation, as Reddit theorists and developer leaks expose the cracks in a Big Bang model that feels increasingly like a patchwork of invisible placeholders. We are no longer in the business of confirming what we know. We are in a race to understand why the universe refused to stay understood. We have realized that we are late to the party and that the skyscrapers in the Sahara were built by an architect who didn't follow our rules. As the data continues to stream back from Lagrange point 2, the cosmic echo remains as a haunting reminder of the limit we have hit. It is the reflection of our own ignorance, a sign that we have reached the horizon of the mirror. The universe is not a slow, organic growth story. It is a skeleton of a giant that was seeded with monstrous anchors from the very first second. We thought we were the protagonists of this story, but we are merely the cosmic echo of a much older, more violent structure that has already reached its conclusion. The golden eye has looked past the veil and found that the beginning was already crowded with mature structures that mock our every equation. The final reveal is that the James Webb Space Telescope didn't just see too far, it saw the boundary of our existence. It peered past the 5% and found a reality where maturity precedes birth, where structure is the rule, and where the rules of our physics finally reach their limit. We are standing in the lobby of a skyscraper that shouldn't exist, looking at a continent on the other side that doesn't belong to us. The golden eye has performed a cosmic archaeology on a civilization of light that existed before time itself, and it has found that we are not alone in the multiverse. We are entangled with a shadow reality that reflects our own in reverse. We are living in the era of vertigo, a time when every new photon is a needle prick to the fabric of our reality. The silence at the edge of the universe is no longer empty. It is a crowded, violent landscape that existed before the stars were supposed to be born. We built Webb to see the dawn, but it has shown us the skeleton of a giant that was finished in the dark. The 13-billion-year-old lie is collapsing, and the message from the golden eye is unmistakable. This is not our universe. We are merely guests in a reality that is far more efficient, more violent, and more ancient than we ever prepared to handle, and the cosmic echo is the only thing left of the story we thought was ours. The golden eye has looked into the mirror, and the universe has finally blinked back.